Mr Chair.
Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, I do want to respond on three important points. The first is that members have claimed that you need to get the house price to income ratio back to 4 as is proposed in the SOP. I challenge members to reflect on the history. There is actually only one period in New Zealand in which that ratio was less than 4, and that's when interest rates were at 15%. 15%. That's the only time. So the point is this. Actually, you need to include interest rates in your measures of housing affordability, because actually, whether it be the interest co-index or whether it be Massey University's index, it's absolutely proper to look at the proportion of a person's income in that criteria for affordability. The second thing is there is a belief from opposition members that by putting an affordability criteria into each of the SHAs that it will help. Let me tell you why that is incorrect. The first thing is that it's incorrect is because, as is the experience that the Auckland Council has had, and the reason the Auckland Council decided not to include affordability requirements in their plans was for this reason. I'll explain why, it's important. Is because the developer has a choice as to whether they use the SHA mechanism or the normal planning process. If you put a whole lot of barriers in the way of the special housing area, the developer will simply choose to use the normal planning process, and you'll defeat exactly the opposite of what you need, more houses being built. And then Mr Twyford says, well, let's not just apply it to all developments, and I draw his attention to the evidence and the decision of the Independent Hearings Panel, and I think every member of this House would accept the judge and that panel as expert. Equally so, I would refer to the report of both the OEC and the Productivity Commission, who say those measures do not work, are counterproductive, and actually make houses less affordable, and the evidence is absolutely strong on that. And effectively what Mr Twyford and Mr Little is saying is, no, the Productivity Commission got it wrong, no, the Independent Hearings Panel got it wrong, and no, the Auckland Council got it wrong, whereas the government is saying, actually, the research shows it does not work. Let me give a very practical dimension. The original Auckland Council proposal was that if a housing development was more than 20 houses, it required a block of affordable houses. So what the developers who were doing an 80-section block did is divided it into 19-section lots to be able to avoid that provision. Now, and the way it says there's ways of dealing it. Actually, when you come to do a housing project, it is often that you will slice it up because of the capital costs of doing the investment. Can I respond to one last point? And the members have said, why is it that the government insists on price points and affordability on the government's Crown Land program, but not in the special housing areas? And there's a very good reason for that. When the government owns the land, it can set the conditions about what occurs on the development. But if the land is privately owned, actually, you cannot force people to invest. If you've got a block of land, for instance, that is typically worth $10 million, and it's going to cost $30 million to build the infrastructure and to convert that into sections, I challenge Labor members to say how you will force people to invest that $30 million. That question they cannot answer. That is why those provisions don't work. That is why, actually, increasing housing supply is the key. This provision will do that, and Labor's opposition to these provisions shows that they are more interested in playing politics than actually getting roofs over the heads of Kiwi families.
I'm going to call